The early foundations of industrialization in the United States were built upon a combination of ingenuity, necessity, and opportunity. In the late 18th and early 19th centuries, America was primarily an agrarian society, with most citizens living on farms and relying on manual labor or small-scale craftsmanship. However, as the population grew and the nation expanded westward, there arose a need for more efficient production methods and economic self-sufficiency. The American Industrial Revolution was deeply inspired by developments in Britain, where textile manufacturing and mechanization had already taken root. Entrepreneurs and inventors began to adapt and innovate upon these ideas in the U.S., laying the groundwork for industrial transformation. One of the earliest examples was Samuel Slater, often called the father of the American Industrial Revolution, who brought British textile technology to the United States. In the 1790s, his establishment of the first successful water-powered spinning mill in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, marked a significant milestone in American industry. This event signaled the beginning of factory-based production, where machines powered by water or steam replaced manual labor and handmade goods. The abundance of rivers and streams in New England provided an ideal environment for early mills, while the region's skilled workforce and entrepreneurial spirit helped expand industrial activity. In addition to water power, America's vast natural resources became vital to its industrial growth. Coal, iron, timber, and cotton provided raw materials that fueled factories and workshops across the nation. The development of interchangeable parts, pioneered by Eli Whitney, further revolutionized manufacturing by allowing goods to be produced faster and repaired more easily. This system laid the foundation for mass production and efficiency that would later define American industry. The government also played an important role in shaping these early industrial foundations. Policies like tariffs on imported goods encouraged domestic manufacturing, while infrastructure projects such as canals, roads, and later railroads made transportation of goods and materials easier and more efficient, as cities began to form around industrial centers. Small towns quickly grew into thriving manufacturing hubs. This combination of innovation, resource availability, and supportive policy created a powerful momentum that would soon propel the United States into an era of rapid industrial expansion. The rise of transportation and communication was one of the most crucial forces behind the industrialization of the United States, as it connected regions, accelerated trade, and allowed ideas and goods to move faster than ever before. In the early years of the 19th century, America faced the challenge of uniting a vast and growing nation. Factories were emerging in the East, farms flourished in the Midwest, and raw materials such as coal, iron, and lumber were extracted from the interior lands. Yet transporting these resources efficiently remained a major obstacle. It was the revolution in transportation that bridged this gap and transformed the country into an interconnected industrial economy. The construction of canals marked the first major step towards solving America's transportation problem. The Erie Canal, completed in 1825, became a symbol of progress and innovation. It linked the Great Lakes with the Atlantic Ocean through the Hudson River, dramatically reducing transportation costs and travel time. Goods such as grain, lumber, and manufactured products could now move swiftly between the interior and coastal cities, stimulating trade and encouraging further industrial growth. The success of the Erie Canal inspired the construction of many others across the nation, forming a vast network of waterways that supported expanding industries and growing urban centers. The introduction of the steamboat added another powerful dimension to transportation. Before its invention, moving goods upstream was slow and labor-intensive, often depending on manpower or animal power. With the development of steam-powered boats, rivers became highways of commerce, allowing large shipments of goods and raw materials to travel, both upstream and downstream, with unprecedented efficiency. This development not only boosted trade, but also helped integrate the nation's regional economies, laying the groundwork for national markets. As the century progressed, railroads emerged as the dominant mode of transportation and became the true engine of American industrialization. Rail lines connected distant regions that had previously been isolated, carrying coal from the Appalachian Mountains to iron factories, timber from northern forests to shipyards, and agricultural goods from the Midwest to urban centers in the East. The completion of the Transcontinental Railroad in 1869 symbolized a new era of national unity and economic power. It allowed people, goods, and resources to move across the continent in days instead of months, fostering westward expansion, stimulating industries like steel and coal, and giving rise to new towns and cities along the routes. Parallel to these transportation advancements came extraordinary developments in communication, which played an equally vital role in the industrialization process. Technological innovation stood at the very heart of American industrialization, driving progress, productivity, and transformation across every sector of the economy. It was the relentless pursuit of new ideas, tools, and systems that turned the United States from a young agricultural nation into a global industrial power. The 19th century became an era of invention and mechanical genius, where the creativity of inventors, engineers, and entrepreneurs reshaped not only industries, but also the daily lives of ordinary citizens. One of the most revolutionary advancements came with the Bessemer process, a method that dramatically reduced the cost and time required to produce steel. Before its invention, steel production was slow, expensive, and limited. With the Bessemer process, large quantities of high-quality steel could be manufactured quickly, sparking a transformation in industries like construction, transportation, and manufacturing. This innovation allowed for the building of stronger railroads, larger bridges, and towering skyscrapers that came to define American cities. Steel became the backbone of the nation's industrial expansion, symbolizing strength, growth, and modernity. The rise of mechanized production also played a crucial role in revolutionizing manufacturing. The concept of interchangeable parts, first developed by Eli Whitney and later refined by others, allowed for the mass production of goods using standardized components. This innovation drastically increased efficiency, reduced costs, and made products more accessible to the general public. Factories that once relied on skilled artisans began using machines and assembly systems to produce goods on a massive scale, marking the beginning of industrial efficiency and the end of purely handcrafted production. Another key figure in America's industrial rise was Thomas Edison, whose inventive genius helped electrify the nation. His development of the incandescent light bulb transformed cities, factories, and homes by extending working hours and improving productivity. Electricity replaced gas and steam as a cleaner and more reliable source of energy, powering machinery and lighting urban centers. Edison's establishment of the first electrical power station in New York City in 1880 signaled the dawn of a new technological era, one in which innovation and industry became inseparable. Meanwhile, Alexander Graham Bell's invention of the telephone revolutionized communication, bridging distances that once divided industries and communities. Business operations became faster and more coordinated, while industries that relied on communication, such as trade, finance, and transportation, flourished. The telephone, paired with earlier inventions like Samuel Morse's telegraph, connected people and industries in ways previously unimaginable, making the United States not just industrially advanced, but also highly interconnected. Urbanization and immigration were deeply intertwined forces that shaped the course of American industrialization, fueling both the workforce and the social transformation of the United States. As industries expanded in the 19th and early 20th centuries, they created a powerful magnet for millions of people, both from rural areas within the country and from across the world, who sought new opportunities in America's rapidly growing cities. This movement of people fundamentally altered the nation's demographics, culture, and economy, turning the United States into a vibrant and diverse industrial society. The shift from rural to urban living began as factories multiplied and cities became centers of production and commerce. Industrial hubs like New York, Chicago, Pittsburgh, Detroit, and Philadelphia grew at astonishing rates, their skylines filled with smokestacks, railways, and sprawling factories. Farmers' sons, former slaves, and young men and women from the countryside moved to cities in search of steady work and wages. The rise of urban life offered a stark contrast to the slow, isolated rhythm of agricultural existence. In the city, life was fast-paced, competitive, and full of promise. But it also came with significant challenges. Overcrowding, inadequate sanitation, and poor housing conditions plagued many working-class neighborhoods, especially as populations soared beyond what city infrastructures could support. At the same time, the United States experienced an unprecedented wave of immigration, which became the lifeblood of industrial labor. Between 1820 and 1920, more than 33 million immigrants arrived in America, primarily from Europe in the early phase. Immigrants came from countries such as Ireland, Germany, and Britain. Later waves brought people from Italy, Poland, Russia, and other parts of Eastern and Southern Europe. These new arrivals were drawn by the promise of employment and the hope for a better life. Yet they often faced long hours, low pay, and dangerous conditions in factories, mines, and construction sites. Despite the hardships, immigrants played a crucial role in building the industrial infrastructure of the nation. They worked on railroads that connected the coasts, laid the bricks of the growing cities, and operated the machinery that powered the factories. Immigrant labor was essential to industries like steel, coal, textiles, and meat packing, where physical endurance and determination were vital. Their willingness to take on grueling jobs helped fuel America's economic rise, but it also made them targets of discrimination and resentment from native-born workers who feared job competition. The rise of big business and powerful industrial leaders marked one of the most defining phases of American industrialization, transforming the economy, reshaping social structures, and redefining the concept of wealth and power in the United States. During the late 19th century, often referred to as the Gilded Age, the American economy experienced explosive growth, fueled by technological innovation, vast natural resources, and an expanding labor force. Industries such as steel, railroads, and finance grew at unprecedented rates. This rapid expansion led to the emergence of colossal corporations and magnates whose influence extended far beyond the business world and into politics. Culture and society at the center of this transformation were men, often called the captains of industry, or by their critics the robber barons. Figures such as Andrew Carnegie, John D. Rockefeller, Cornelius Vanderbilt, and J.P. Morgan became household names, representing both the promise and the peril of industrial capitalism. Their vast enterprises revolutionized production, transportation, and finance, introducing efficiency and innovation on a scale the world had never seen before. Yet at the same time, their practices raised deep moral and political questions about monopoly power, worker exploitation, and economic inequality. Andrew Carnegie, a Scottish immigrant who rose from poverty, became the dominant force in the steel industry. His company, Carnegie Steel, utilized the Bessemer process and vertical integration, controlling every step from raw materials to distribution, to produce steel at lower costs and higher volumes. Carnegie's efficiency-driven methods allowed him to undercut competitors and dominate the market. He later became a major philanthropist, advocating the gospel of wealth, a belief that the rich had a moral duty to use their fortune for the public good, through education, libraries, and social causes. His story embodied the ideal of the self-made man, but it also reflected the vast divide between the wealthy elite and the working class that his success helped create. John D. Rockefeller built his empire in oil, founding Standard Oil Company, which became one of the most powerful and controversial corporations in history. Through aggressive business tactics, secret deals with railroads, and strategic acquisitions of competitors, Rockefeller achieved near total control of the oil industry, creating one of the first major monopolies in the United States. His company refined and distributed nearly 90% of the nation's oil at its peak. While Standard Oil brought order, efficiency, and lower prices to a chaotic industry, its dominance stifled competition and raised public concern over corporate greed and manipulation. Rockefeller's immense wealth made him one of the richest men in history, and his later philanthropic work, funding universities, medical research, and global charities, attempted to redefine his legacy. As American industrialization accelerated and factories multiplied across the nation, the rise of labor movements and the push for social change became an inevitable response to the harsh realities faced by the working class. Behind the towering smokestacks and the glittering wealth of industrial magnates lay the lives of millions of laborers, men, women, and children, who toiled in unsafe conditions for meager wages and long hours. The Industrial Revolution in the United States may have created enormous prosperity, but it also exposed deep inequalities that would give birth to one of the most powerful forces in modern American history, the organized labor movement. In the early stages of industrialization, factory work was grueling and dehumanizing. Laborers often worked 12 to 16 hours a day, -1 days a week, in poorly ventilated, overcrowded, and dangerous workplaces. Industrial accidents were common, and safety regulations were virtually non-existent. Women and children were employed in large numbers because they could be paid less than men, making them more attractive to employers seeking to maximize profits. Families depended on every member's earnings just to survive. As industries expanded, workers began to realize that individual complaints carried little weight against powerful employers. Collective action, therefore, became the only viable path to change. The first labor unions emerged in the early 19th century, formed by skilled craftsmen and artisans who wanted to protect their trade interests. Over time, as industrial work replaced craftsmanship, unions grew to represent unskilled and semi-skilled laborers as well. The rise of organizations such as the Knights of Labor, founded in 1869, marked a turning point in labor activism. The Knights sought to unite all workers, regardless of trade, gender, or race, under a single organization to fight for improved wages, shorter workdays, and safer conditions. They envisioned not only economic reform, but also a more cooperative society, where workers could share in the fruits of their labor. However, the growing tension between workers and employers often led to violent confrontations. One of the most significant early labor conflicts was the Haymarket Affair of 1886. In Chicago, what began as a peaceful rally for the 8-hour workday ended in chaos after a bomb explosion led to the deaths of several police officers and civilians. The event shocked the nation and deeply affected public perception of labor unions, associating them unfairly with radicalism and violence. Despite this setback, the fight for the 8-hour workday continued and eventually became a cornerstone of labor reform. The lasting impact of industrialization on American society cannot be overstated. It was a period that fundamentally redefined the nation's economic structure, cultural identity, and global standing. The Industrial Revolution did more than build factories and railroads. It transformed how Americans lived, worked, and thought about progress. It turned the United States into a global industrial powerhouse, reshaping its cities, altering social classes, and setting the foundation for the technological and economic systems that still define modern America today. One of the most visible legacies of industrialization was the creation of a modern capitalist economy driven by mass production, mechanization, and corporate organization. The factory system, introduced during the 19th century, evolved into a new economic order that prioritized efficiency, specialization, and productivity. This shift created unprecedented levels of wealth and innovation, allowing the United States to surpass European nations as the world's leading industrial economy. By the early 20th century, the rise of consumer goods, from textiles and furniture to automobiles and appliances, turned America into a society built on consumption and comfort. The ideals of convenience, speed, and progress became embedded in the American way of life. Industrialization also reshaped social and class structures in profound ways. A new industrial middle class emerged, made up of managers, engineers, professionals, and small business owners, who occupied a space between the wealthy elite and the working poor. This group became instrumental in stabilizing American society, promoting values like education, hard work, and civic responsibility. At the same time, the expansion of the working class created solidarity among laborers, giving rise to labor unions and collective identities centered around shared economic struggles. However, this also deepened class divisions, as wealth became concentrated in the hands of a few industrial magnates, while millions of workers lived in poverty, often in overcrowded urban neighborhoods. Culturally, industrialization accelerated the process of urbanization, which reshaped the American landscape. Small towns transformed into sprawling cities filled with factories, offices, and tenements. Urban centers became melting pots of languages, religions, and traditions due to massive waves of immigration. These cities were the birthplace of modern American culture. From jazz music and newspapers to political activism and social reform, they became arenas of both opportunity and inequality. where people from every corner of the world came together to chase the American dream, even as they confronted the realities of economic hardship and discrimination.